Who are the Cincinnati Bengals? They've blown out AFC contenders like the Steelers and the Raiders. They played through overtime with the Packers, and Jamar Chase was setting the world on fire. Then they lost to the Jets, put up a clunker against Cleveland, and Chase has fallen off the map with only 152 yards in the last 4 games. The offensive line has been good in spots, but not great. Joe Mixon has come alive in the last couple weeks, and they're starting to figure things out on offense with the quick passing game, running to the strength of their offensive line, and layering some plays to build off of each other. Zach Taylor, who cut his teeth with Joe Philbin in Miami and then Sean McVay in Los Angeles, is starting to use more outside zone and its counters within the offense. Taylor doesn't run a McVay offense, though. He'll use motion and some cool wrinkles, and they've started to lean more on that outside zone of late, but they also use a lot of duo and don't really base the run or tie a lot of the boot action and rollout passing to outside zone. The offensive line was a topic of contention going into the season, especially with the drafting of Jamar Chase. While the line has evened out and is starting to get more recognition and consistency, there are still some very specific issues that they have. Their center, Trey Hopkins, and their right guard, Hakeem Adeniji, have a particularly hard time dealing with stunts and spikes from the defensive line. When running outside zone, it's critical for the offensive linemen to stay on their tracks and take good aiming points. That helps account for any slants or spikes from the defensive line. If you're on your track, it doesn't matter who appears because you're in the right spot to pick them up. That's the beauty of zone running. Against this 3 technique, the center needs to take an angle that will allow him to overtake. That means he should aim the screws of his helmet at the screws of the helmet of the defensive tackle. He must stay on that track for 3 steps. If that defensive tackle doesn't spike, he climbs up to the linebacker. If that defensive tackle does spike, then he's taking the right track to be able to immediately pick him up. On the snap, you can quickly see that his aiming point is on the back shoulder of the 3 technique. That puts him in a bad spot to be able to overtake or handle that player spiking inside. His angle is way too vertical, and he only gets the back of the defensive tackle. Ideally in this situation, as soon as the guard sees the defensive tackle spike, all he does is leave him and stay on his track. He can punch and help carry that player to the center, but as soon as he turns his hips with the spike, that immediately allows play side run through from the linebacker. If the center takes the right track to at least square that player up and let the running back read it, that leaves the right guard free to climb to the second level and account for the play side linebacker. Whatever the run scheme, that problem consistently popped up for the right guard and center when working against 3 techniques crashing down into the A-gap. Hopkins has some real tough times on double teams and combos as well. It's much better than earlier in the year, but it's still not great. Right tackle Riley Reiff has also had some bumps in the road, especially against the Raiders. Max Crosby just took his lunch multiple times through that game, but he's otherwise been relatively solid. However, the right side of that line is the clear weak point. For a veteran guy, he's lost in pass protection a couple times. He's been very slow out of his stance and just not stuff you expect to see from a guy that's spent multiple years in the league. So what have the Bengals done to combat this? Well, they've run left, away from that weak right side of the line, and they've run outside. Cincinnati has started to really gel on that left side of the line, and they've been really effective running pin and pull schemes to force flow from the defense and hide some of the interior issues. The combo blocks on zone on the left side of the line have been miles better than the right. It's a 1 technique, but you can see the difference in the center's angle, the left guard helping with the shoulder and keeping his eyes on the linebacker. There's also a great overtake on the backside from Riley Reiff. It makes the entire scheme and play look different and more effective. The Bengals have really started to hit their groove with that left side of the line, especially running outside zone in the past couple weeks against the Steelers and the Raiders. Even on spikes, this time from a 4 technique over the tackle, the left guard, Quinton Spain, does a great job. He stays on his track and attaches to the spiking player with the left tackle using a pushover technique to help out the tight end. The tackle then climbs to the linebacker. The Bengals have also simply just said, F it, and run outside so they don't have to deal with those combos on the inside. The receiver cracks down and the ball is pitched outside onto the perimeter where Mixon is incredibly tough to deal with. So that covers some of what's going on with the offensive line, and now let's transition into how Zach Taylor attacks the passing game. Despite having some really good talent with Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, Burrow's passing charts are really kind of dominated with underneath throws. And that's not necessarily bad because the quick game for the Bengals is generally what they do best. They run a ton of the dragon concept and like to isolate the boundary side receiver because it isolates one defender. That creates a pseudo one-on-one outside and lets Burrow get the ball out fast. Dragon is one of the most basic quick game concepts that there are. All it is a slant route and a flat route. If the flat defender flies to the flats, the slant window's open. If they stay passive under the slant window, there's space outside on the flat. It's really their money play, and they hit it whenever they need a spark or a conversion on third down. Cincinnati especially loves to isolate Ja'Marr Chase as a single receiver and let him get the ball in space. It's almost free yards for Burrow and the offense. It's incredibly hard to stop when you have a guy outside who's dynamic like Chase is. He can then turn those quick little slants into big, huge plays that change games. The Bengals have talented receivers, and getting the ball into their hands is critical for their success. Almost every one of them is a dangerous yards after catch guy. The running backs are also pretty heavily used in the pass game, which really operates as an extension of the run with some West Coast and possession football kind of vibes here. The problem that the Bengals are starting to get into is that they're very formationally predictable. In the games that I charted, when Cincinnati ran true spread formations like trips and twins, they threw the ball 85% of the time, and the 15% of the time that they ran the ball, it was a draw play. Additionally, whenever they had two players in a split backfield at sort of the running back spots, they threw 100% of the time. Now, you still got to defend the pass, and the concepts vary, but it's a really easy pass-run call for the defense. In the case of the Ravens game, whenever the Bengals came out in spread formations or a split backfield, Baltimore really would try to bring pressure and either bracket or run man coverage behind it. More often than not, the Bengals couldn't win on an individual basis outside. They won the game, but those formational packages were not very successful. So those formations are not necessarily going to tip things to allow DBs to jump routes or know what concepts they're running, but it does let coordinators and defenses make easy checks. They can get into specific pressure or coverage looks that they like because they know a pass is coming. The offense is really at its best when the deep ball is unlocked, and we saw that early in the year with Ja'Marr Chase, but the deep ball has really kind of disappeared a little bit in the recent weeks. The main issue is that Burrow just doesn't really trust anyone other than Chase to go win a ball. And that might be changing with Higgins because he's given him a couple opportunities recently, but almost all of Burrow's deep shots target Chase. And to their credit, they did work out a lot, but teams have started to bracket Chase, which takes away his deep ball opportunities. In turn, Burrow throws a lot more underneath, and that can condense the field. Chase got a lot of anticipation throws from Burrow as well, and that timing and trust hasn't quite been there with other receivers until the last couple weeks. So if someone else like T. Higgins gains the trust of Burrow, that would be a huge boost to an already ascending offense. The Bengals are getting better as the season goes on. They're not perfect, and there's still some issues both with personnel and with play calling, but Zach Taylor has made some efforts to fix some of the problems that have popped up. The pieces are starting to assemble in Cincinnati, and regardless of whether they figure it out this year for a big run, the foundation is pretty strong with Mixon, Burrow, and Chase, and at least a functional offensive line to keep those guys clean. The Bengals are exciting for the first time in a while, and with a couple more pieces and tweaks, they could be back for good. Hey guys, I appreciate you watching all the way through. Make sure you drop a comment. Let me know someone, a scheme, idea, person who you want to see broken down here in the future. I'm also releasing a speaking football course that goes over the basics of the language of football, what techniques are, what alignments are. So if you're interested in that, check out the link in the description.